Here we are with another black prime canvas. So we're going to use an acrylic ground here with acrylics over the top. In that case, with acrylics over the top, we're going to be able to do a bit of glazing and using the paint quite thinly in places, impasto, and then gradually building up layers and treating it in between oil painting techniques and watercolour techniques, which is one of the beauties of using the acrylics. And I'm going to do this rather nice scene of a sunrise where I took a series of shots as yachts left Saltfleet Haven a while ago after the barbecue, early morning, and then I got a shot later on of some Canada geese going across, and I've superimposed them on to get this early morning of barnacle geese. A nice golden and silver light coming through. One of the beauties of this painting is we can do it with a very limited palette. All we need is burnt sienna, some chrome yellow, some Prussian blue, and a little white. And all of our colours can be mixed from those. In this case I started with a very dark acrylic ground. Usually I mix deep Prussian blue and maybe a purple, but at this time just a simple black acrylic base. By feathering the paint on, or by painting it a little more thinly, or even just using dry brush work or scumbling, we can let the black base show through. So we can glaze and make things darker, or we can allow texturing to happen, especially for reflections there or textural effects in the sky and the clouds. I started by painting white around the silhouettes of the 4 flying geese, so you can see them showing there, and then I painted those shapes in at the very end of the painting into more detail. Then I worked the white outwards, gradually moving into the lighter blues and mixing my greys. The primary colour of blue and then the tertiary colour of the brown, the burnt sienna, can give you some lovely variations of subtle greys, because you can move towards the cool colours with the blue or towards the warm colours with the browns. Adding white as well then, and then using the glazing effects of the dark showing through as I'm doing here, you can see these very subtle blue greys that we can get. By using just the burnt sienna and the Prussian blue, we can get almost a black anyway. So between these 4 colours we can work through from the very darkest almost blacks to the very lightest pale warm and cool greys. Of course with the burnt sienna and white we can get a pink, and we've also got our cream with the yellow and white. Then adding those together we can get orangey pale colours. We've got a whole variety of colours just with those few. Using acrylics of course has both swings and roundabouts. In other words, there are pluses and minuses. The paint dries very quickly, yes, which means that we can put succeeding coats on quite quickly. We can also do glazes much more quickly than with oils. But it also means that it dries quick enough to make it difficult to blend at times. So you've got to blend very quickly before the paint dries, or you'll be glazing or having to work new coats over it. With oils that's quite different because they remain wet, so you can keep blending or working them for ages afterwards. You can buy different mediums to add to the acrylics. You can buy retarders to actually slow them down from drying, and even some mediums that will even speed them up drying. Humidity also plays quite a big difference both in watercolours and with acrylics. One of the most difficult times I had painting acrylics was over in Switzerland, where in fact top of the mountains it was just so hot that I couldn't get the paint from the stay wet palette on my brush onto the canvas before it was drying on the brush. Anyway, why not watch a while now as I gradually build this painting up, mixing this variety of cool and warm greys, and you see the ways I use different directions of my brush strokes to get the feeling of the depth of the water and reflections from this light, almost like moonlight though it's early sunrise, shining over the surface of the water. So often I see people just painting along forms, along an arm or down a leg, or just across water. If we're doing water, one of the best ways on still water is to feel the depth first, to do the verticals first, to feel into the reflections and the depth of it, and then to go across on the surface strokes with the horizontals more. Again, to give a sky with more depth, if we feel with the brush strokes the directions of perspective, especially one-point perspective, so we aim all of our little fluffy clouds towards one point into the distance with our brush strokes rather than just going across or underneath the clouds, it'll make a sky of greater depth, almost like the rays of sunset. Here you see me working all around these clouds in different directions, the rays of light coming out, feeling around the forms, the reflections and counter-reflections. Can you see now this variety between the warm and cool greys just by adding a little burnt sienna or a little more of the blue? I haven't even got to the creams yet. I've only just barely touched on the fraction of yellow into those clouds. And also how I'm constantly changing direction of brushstroke from vertical to horizontal, playing the lights against the darks, and also the textures and surfaces. Here, this edge of this piece of marshland, where it was black, and I'm coming now in with the deep Prussian blue and some brown, and giving it a slightly rougher edge, as if the reeds are breaking into the edge reflections there, and they're reflecting from the reeds above. In a moment I'll be painting the reeds on the top surface of that dark edge. Once again I'm starting very loosely so that I can tighten up to any level that I wish, almost to photographic realism if I wanted to do that. You can see I'm now working more finely on the geese, and I've been painting little highlights and reflections and ripples on the water with a rigger brush as I am now, so we can go into as much detail as we want. Well, there we are, quite a nice painting done all within about 1 hour 30 minutes. So very rapid techniques, giving us these lovely effects just with those few colours. Well, the paper in the painting preceding this one gave me a lot of problems. Either it was a faulty piece of paper or it had just been worn with age so much that it just behaved like blotting paper. So it didn't really give me a chance to use these watercolours properly and show you properly, but it did give me a chance to show you how we could use pastel over the watercolour afterwards to bring something back that maybe hasn't gone quite right or as you would expect. So I'm going to do this one very loosely for you with just a few colours. We only need ultramarine, Prussian blue and just one or two other colours from our palette here, which I'll show you as we go along. I've already drawn the composition out. I'm going to use this large oval mop, a rigger and this little sword, which is quite fun and will give me a bit of control as well. So let's start by mixing up some of the lighter colours, because we're going to paint these much lighter areas of the sky first of all. And I'm going to put in a little bit of water where these white areas are and then let some of the blue flood into that. So taking some just plain clean water on my brush and giving this a nice even wash all the way down with clean water, right down to my horizon line, which is there at the moment. We'll go below that later, just to get these sky effects all the way along the horizon line, working way upwards. A wash of water, just so the paper is wet and ready to receive the watercolour. And make sure we haven't left any dry areas, because we don't want actually any very white areas with dry edges. If we paint wet next to wet, it's going to be soft edges. If we paint wet into wet, it's soft edges. If we paint wet onto dry or wet next to dry, it's going to be a sharp edge. We only want soft edges here. Right, so the water's all over it now. So I'm going to take just a little bit, where this light here is going, a little bit of take a little bit of raw sienna at first, just to drop into some of these areas of the cloud. But I'm going to leave these lighter areas. A little touch of the raw sienna, and just tickle that and feather that in so it goes out softly amongst these white clouds, all the way down. It's going to be slightly darker, right down to the base cloud here. All the way down to there. In fact, it can be slightly more orange when we get down there in a moment, but just for the moment. Now, as the paint dries, it doesn't matter if we go through things like the figure and so on, because we're going to paint him much darker later on. So it's quite a lazy way of painting, really. We can just paint these little streaks of this colour where we need them in a mottled, feathery pattern of the sky. As the paint dries, it will become as the paint dries and we paint onto it, the paint will spread less. So as this is drying off even now, it's going to spread less. And you can see already that compared to that one we were doing before this, we've got far more control with the paint. It's not soaking in as the other one was the other day. It's not soaking in as it was earlier on. And I just could not lift it or move it, or it went straight in and didn't spread. But this time we've got the chance to show you how it can be done. And we'll start to manipulate the paint into the feeling of some of these rays of light coming through here. The excess water, suck it up, take it away. Over here we've got some more gold and yellow areas, so I'm going to drop in a little bit of chrome into there. Just mix it on the side of my palette first of all so it's not too bright, and back into the clouds here, and just dropping those in so that they go softly into the paint, spread out gently right the way through there. Take some more from there, right the way through into here, up to here. As it comes up, it gets a little more orange, so I'm going to take a little bit of cadmium orange now and just drop that in there as well. not too strong. Right down to the level of the sea. Again over the boat here, to the sky over there a little bit, coming through. And it's still dry, it's still wet enough that it's blending in softly, which is what we wanted. And we couldn't do that earlier on, nor could we lift out like this. You see, I could just bring the brush across and lift that paint away there. Take a wet brush and just lift it away, whereas the other watercolour paper hadn't got enough glue size in it. Now watercolour paper is made with a certain amount of glue size onto the surface of the paper, which is what actually denotes how much water it will resist and not take in, and that's quite important to us. Whereas that paper I used the other day seemed to have none at all and was just soaking the paper in like blotting paper. Right, a little tiny touch of rose into there, I think, to the top here, just where it's sun's rising through gently, or just let a little bit of rose come in down into the sea there, and up into the sky a little bit here as well. A little touch of rose, which I'll mix on the side of my palette again just to be able to blend it in up here a fraction into these clouds that are catching the sunlight as it comes up gently over this North Sea at Saltfleet. So that's how we get these lovely soft effects then. Now we've got to work into that fairly quickly because I still want to remain wet into wet. So I'm going to put my sky in, it's got to be fairly soon. So I'm going to now take some cerulean and come back down into this with the cerulean. And just lob it in where these clouds are, leaving the lights behind. Now a bit of cobalt. It is a more bluer colour. See the difference going on there. So these layers of cloud, just form those across here. Just feeling our way, leaving it so that it gently spreads down, giving these soft cloudy effects. Now how far you leave the spaces in between denotes obviously how close it will eventually melt together. So if I leave a wide space, I'm still leaving a fair amount of yellow in between. If I were to make it a slightly narrower space, then it would blend in and let me brush there. It would blend in and we'd hardly have any yellow at all, as here, where I don't want much because it's much darker over there. And we'll let this fairy effects trickle down the paper, giving this early morning light shining through here. Take the cerulean, come up to here where it's a little bit of cobalt, come up to here and really painting that lovely blue sky up here and right through the mast. You see the paper's getting a bit drier now, so I'm getting slightly harder effects. Got some sharp edges now, and I want to get this mottled effect of the cloud coming through up here. Let's mix some more cerulean and cobalt. Come back up into here, these clouds, and mottle them in. Got a bit of mottled cloud effect up there. So we're using the tip of the brush and sideways. We'll get these. There it's much stronger. Little bits of blue coming through. into here, behind the mast, quite thinly down there, because remember, the thinner we put the paint on, the lighter it's going to show as it dries. Little dots of the mottled effect which will spread out across into the cloud. Before I go into the slightly darker greys, I'd be a bit stronger with that, cobalt up into here with these clouds, up into the higher bits of sky, so a little bit stronger with the cobalt now to give the effect of a darker blue atmosphere way up here. And you can see now the lovely effects we can get painting this way. And this is what I wasn't able to do with that paper yesterday that didn't have enough glue size. Whether a manufacturer's fault or just very old paper, I don't know. And we shall never know. But it doesn't matter, because here we are putting it to rights, and I showed you the other day how you could correct that fault as well. There we go then. Now a little bit stronger still. Keep dropping in this colour until you get the depth of blues, different effects that you want up here. You get this mottled effect of the clouds. Early morning clouds. Now it's very light down here, but we've got some much darker greys against it in a moment. You want to get this mottled effect. By dabbing in little bits of the blue that will spread gradually. You can only do this way with watercolour. You can use acrylic paint similar to watercolour onto a canvas, and the same way as we can use acrylic inks. But you can really never get this luminosity and quite the lovely colours you can get this way. I'll start looking at some of these greys, and we'll use our primary blue for that, our ultramarine in this case, with a little touch of burnt sienna, which will give me quite a nice grey. A little bit more blue into that I want, not quite blue enough for my liking. Test it, yeah, there we go. Now while it's still wet then, here, just above that bit of cloud, we want to start dropping in this greeny, bluey grey. A little bit browner further up. To here, a little bit more of the blue into it. Over that cloud we've got our deeper shadow of cloud coming in. You can see we can do it just by dropping it, letting the watercolour do the rest of the work with it while it feathers in. And to add a little touch of purple to it, I just wanted a little bit more mauve into that. There we go, just give a little bit more depth to those clouds. And we'll let them spread right down carefully into here. Still going for this mottled effect of the sunlight glowing behind, which gives us a slightly darker cloud. A little touch of brown. into this bluey dark. As it dries more, so I can paint the colours on more strongly and they won't bleed out quite as much. A little bit browner over this side. Again, still a mottled effect, catching the sunlight. Here, a little touch of the mauve, a little touch of the brown, mauve, and the ultramarine. Back here again and drop in a bit darker still. These clouds. Up here again, drop a second lot in just to make it a bit darker. Then I let it dry a bit more as I go on, because otherwise it's just going to keep spreading out and it's no good just keep piling it on. We need to go a little bit stronger in places. There we go, to get this effect. Now that's spread a bit too much there, so what we're going to do is clean our brush off and dry it, and come back in there and just lift out some of these areas. Take some of the paint away, in other words, because it's just spread a bit too far down there. And it should be much lighter. You see, we can do that with this paper, which we couldn't with the one yesterday. It stained in so much. So once I've got those light bits out, when it's a bit drier I can come back and drop in some slightly darker clouds there to really make that shine out again. But we've got our basic soft fluffy cloud effects. Now while this sky is drying, because I can't do anything with this at the moment, if I tried to touch it now in between it would almost certainly cauliflower. Let's come back to this bit where the paint just comes down over the sea and blend it back in, soften it back in, so we don't have a hard edge there. Then we want to be bringing down the light reflection from here. So I'm going to bring that water down as before, right round the boat, and paint all of the area up to the lighter areas, up to the boat there, here. A bit of sea behind. I've just about done that bit anyway. And take a little bit of the rose and yellow that we used earlier and just allow that to come down that edge. Too much, just enough to and then with the tip of the brush just bring it through that light area, blending it through into there. Coming back to my ultramarine blue and a little touch of the rose, and we'll bring that soft purple, a little bit thinner than that perhaps, at first down into here, all the way down, coming just across. It's very wet at the moment, I want it over wet actually, here, and as before we'll bring some of that through, as smaller as it comes up, and the same colour over here to the horizon, just coming through the top and letting some of that come through as waves. And we'll paint a bit more detail into there in a moment. This is just to get the effect of light and the softer colours before we start putting in more detail of ripples and waves. So we want to keep fairly loose with this, but we still want to get those wave effects by using watercolour effects. Same here, we've got a colours coming through there behind. And just tidy up this edge, make it a little bit softer, just to blend with the horizon. We'll come back in with a little bit more paint and washes over that later. That's got our soft effects going on, our effective light. Okay, whilst that's drying, and so we go on, because this is still damp yet, you see it's still cockled. Let's look at the boat itself and the colour we might want on that. Now on the boat, on these cool areas, we can afford to make that all one tone basically, with a little bit lighter just in areas like that. So it's going to be a warm blue. I would say we're going to be using some ultramarine, I'm going to be using some cobalt, and a little touch of that purple from earlier. Let's give that a wash over the whole of that white area of the boat and see what happens. So over these two, yeah, a little bit more of the rose into it. There we go. That's a lovely. There we go. That's a lovely colour to be using for the boat. So in fact, the whole of the boat could be painted with that, except for the dark areas of the boat. So we'll give that a wash of that all the way across here. Yeah, all of this can give him a coat of that blue purple. We're going to paint the darks over it later. And this will establish our cool areas of the white bit of the boat. Even through there a bit, because I'm going to use some wet into wet techniques with that in a moment. Right through behind here. I'm going to leave that top edge there just for a moment. There's a reason for that, you'll see in a minute. I'll take some more of my ultramarine there and a little bit of the pink, just add it into that. A little bit of cobalt. And let's see how we do with that. Yes, that's more like it. We'll just drop that wet into wet back into that bit there in a moment. A little bit darker coming around there. And a tad darker on this edge. Down some of this here. A little bit darker as the light shines across it. And this whole piece behind him here is a bit darker. And down to there. Doesn't matter if I come through him, as I say, because we're going to paint him in dark later anyway. But what I will do now is down into this deep bit of the shadow, make that a little bit darker by adding some cobalt and a little touch of the burnt sienna, just to go a bit deeper down into this piece here. And behind here. So I'll do the same with along that edge there as well. When I blend in a moment, you'll see why I wanted that lighter area. This lower edge here can be made a bit darker now. Across that bit there can be made a bit darker now. And there, here, edge of that cabin, just catching the light there, and possibly just along that edge. That's that bit. Leave that alone to dry. We're going to paint this painting in layers basically. We've done the first layer now, wet into wet. Now we're going to be doing second layer of slightly darker clouds, and then we'll do the third and final dark layer. So the next layer with the clouds, we want these deep blue-grey again, so we'll take some ultramarine and mix that in with a little bit of Prussian from earlier, and then some burnt sienna, and that gives us quite a nice blue-grey. Now this paint is now dry, so whatever I paint onto here is going to have a hard edge. You can see now that I can put on these clouds with a much darker, stronger feel to them. And I'll soften the edges of them in just a moment because I don't want them too heavy. Right up and through. Some of these clouds here want to be slightly darker at the edges now as well. So painting wet next to wet or onto wet gives us the soft effects, but now painting wet onto dry and we get a totally different effect of these darker and slightly harder edge clouds coming through here. Now we don't want them too hard edged, so I'm going to come back a little bit and just soften them slightly in places so that we have lost and found edges. So clean water on your brush and just come back and soften them down just a little bit. So we've got the darks, but they've become a little bit softer as we blend them in. And back to the same colour, a little bit more brown, the ultramarine. Come back into them again, a little bit more blue. As I've got them wet already, I can afford to drop in a bit more blue now. Right up, we come out from this cloud here. And this is so that we can get the effect of these darker, stronger clouds blending over the top here with the mottled sky behind. Hear it raining outside here now. Darker cloud coming up here as well. The feeling of these smaller clouds blending away into the distance. And over the far side it's a little bit bluer, so I'm going to add a little bit more blue to that same colour. Come back over here, and in fact the whole of this part of the sky above the sea there wants to be darker. Come right through there, right through behind them here. No matter if that's darker down there because it has to be dark later anyway. And to blend that through now, which I left earlier, with a bit of that blue. And that blue sky there, to soften it again a bit, is coming up in layers. Behind here. right up and through into those greys, which were the blue and the brown. A bit too strong there, a little bit more brown. Coming forward there into the sky. So a little bit more texture in the cloud just there as well. So I'm going to use a tad more brown into the clouds just here, just to bring them forward a bit. And leave it glowing through there in the distance. Now I've got that effect there. I'm going to go a little bit stronger with that blue and brown here. Just drop in a bit more. And so you can see how we can get the darker cloud against the lighter. Still want to be a little bit darker into these clouds here. So I'm going to take a little bit of the Prussian and add it into that with some of the brown, which will give me darker still, just to drop in the very top of these darker clouds against the sky there. Darker still there. Really, so it goes quite dark into those bits. Now, up here we've got a slightly darker sea against the sky, so I'm going to just take some cobalt and carefully just come in at this top layer here, making that a bit darker, right through. Here, a thin wash of colour just coming through to the, if it gets a bit lighter there, just broken line across where the sunlight comes down there, and I'm going to drag across dry brush into that, get the effect of light shimmering through here. You see the dry brush, what we can do is quite effective there, letting the light come through. A few strokes downwards as well, and then a bit stronger at the edge. Again, we'll do a few vertical strokes too. Coming out from there. And we'll hit this with a bit of the darker paint later when we come in. This is just building it up gradually. A little bit more cobalt. The dry brush work there. And building up these layers. Dragging through over here just a little bit. Now, talking of glazes, we can now add a glaze over this piece to make it a tone darker. A bit bluer with this ultramarine, so a thin coat of ultramarine coming around here. Down Same over here. Quite dark down inside there. And dark around some of this too. And this is the difference between a glaze and a wash. This is a glaze of paint over one colour, which of course brings it down a whole tone. There we go at that. And we just need to soften some of the edges a bit. Clean water again. And that gives us the layers of coming up from light to dark. Right, coming back to the water here, still using my large oval mop. I'm going to mix some ultramarine again, a little bit of the burnt sienna, and start to come in a bit darker, actually playing with the waves a bit more now, actually playing these little ripples coming through, some of them larger, some of them smaller. Just build up this feeling of quite light at first, these darks against the lights here. Because it was a very mirrored sea type morning. Darker on top here. In places we can go darker still. I'm going to add a little bit of Prussian to the brown now. And really start to drop in some quite dark. Because we're going to go very dark like that in a moment from the reflection anyway. So I just want to link this in now. That'll do that. Now this area of the life belt, so this bit of life belt just here, very dark orange, which in that case is going to be almost the use of our Indian red, I think. Perhaps tone down just slightly in there with a little bit of the blue. Let's see what happens. Come over here, find him, there he is, and just come in there with that. It wants to be a fraction darker, so a little bit of that colour with some touch of Prussian into it. Yeah, that's a nice dark warm colour. Let's come down there with that. And we'll let that flowing down this dark area as well. Right down through here because it wants to be quite dark in there. Possibly a bit darker still. Let's give it a little bit of the purple. Because it does want to sing a bit down here, this, a bit of the purple into it there then. Then warm still. We're almost there with that colour, I think. Just a little bit more red into it. Tad. There we are. I'm going to move to my sword brush now, because I want to start working on the figure and the boat cover. So he's quite warm. Take some burnt sienna, put it with that earlier Prussian mix, but quite a dark warm mix. Come back over there to his face and just make the whole of his head that colour. We should, with the sword, be able to have a bit of control. Bring that right through here. Down and around. And we're going to let, in a moment, a very dark colour come into that and blend into it. That's warm. While I'm here, I'll just add a little bit more warmth to that life belt that I was doing earlier. Now if I now make up very, very strong dark, and this really does want to be strong now, with the Prussian and the warm of the, and I drop that in to the back of that, just let that flow through. And let it blend into that face on its own. Coming down here, the whole of that. This is the beauty of the sword brush, you can twist the brush round any direction. His hand coming round there. Keep it simple. Brush loaded up with paint. It's dark all the way up here. But I could even do a slightly larger brush than this sword, a bigger sword. His hand comes up and round to there. Fill this up. I can get that point where I want it. I'm going to come back to my big mop now, to painting most of these darks, and I'm going to actually start with a lot more ultramarine in these dark areas here, because I'm going to bring down the black from that, as I did just now. Let the reflection of light come into there. Dark across that bit, more that blue into there, and into this little bit here. I think just use my finger to blend that in there quick. Now that very, very dark colour, the Prussian and the burnt sienna, plenty of it, and straight away in one foul swoop, just in there, down, round, all of this bit up. A couple of strokes. that's it. And this line there, dark line there, one here. Keep it simple. The lovely dark sail here. Just a couple of simple strokes to indicate it, not going into huge details. Use the sword again in a minute for the other bits. That window area. It's quite useful to have a round brush. The same here. And then the mast, while we're at it, might as well put that in. We've got the right brush for it. All the way up through here. To that. Slightly larger area there, and continues above the sail. And the whole of that sail is going to be painted in with the ultramarine first of all. Right up and through here, back and down. Then we need to come in with the dark paint again, the bottom of it, and drop in these darker lines just into that to give it a little bit of form. Mix up plenty of that colour again, because we're going to now have a go at the hull of the boat. Burnt sienna and Prussian blue, nice and thick, and in one nice even coat, painting around the buoyancy fenders. We'll let the dry brush work do a little bit there for foam. Not that we've got any there, but we'll do it for the moment. Mix up a bit more. Back under here. And down, and then coming into here, just letting it bite into the water and linking in with those little dark bits that we did earlier. It will then come straight on down. All the way across. And into here a little, some of those darks just to the illusion of that. Right, we've got to do left on that now. It's coming a bit darker in a few spots, like that. and also to put in some of the rigging. You can see how quickly we built that up as it is. Now while I've got this brush, I'm actually able to do some quite fine work with it anyway. Got that sail coming down behind there, some ropes and so on and around here swirled up. We'll just indicate them. There's the anchor coming out here. There's a stanchion there. Some of this we can just flick in with this. We don't even need the sword for all of it, just odd bits. Now to change back to my sword, and we'll put a bit of finer work in with that. Let's see what we can do about a little bit of this rigging. Just want to indicate it. It should be possible to use a straight edge and carefully make a thin line here. Let's try and see. Could use a rigger for this, but I'm just using this sword just to show you what they can do. Right, that's a sword brush. Now for fun, here's a rigger to do exactly the same work, and let's see what happens. So very, very similar. Give it a little more form. While I've got the ultramarine on the brush, then we'll look at how the water may be affected slightly more as well. Some of these blues are coming in to there, water there. Doesn't want to be quite so bright, just a little of the light showing through. And we can call that painting done, I reckon. Right, on the final one in this little series of this sunrise over Saltfleet, we're going to do a slightly more traditional watercolour and build up again in a series of layers, but a bit more carefully this time. I'm not going to put water over the whole thing and let it blend out. I'm going to just put water in these light areas here and then let the paint again come in wet into wet, just the right time, and we'll gradually build up in layers of wet over dry. Right, I'm going to start with this area here, is clean water. And white there. Now I'm going to use a little bit of aureolin yellow to start with on this, very light lemony yellow, coming up and around the edges. So I'm not putting water all over it, I'm just going to put in this very light lemon yellow for these clouds to start off with, and then go a little bit warm in a moment. It's just where the sun's reflecting up into it, it's almost a greeny yellow. Comes right down through here. It's a lovely paper to work on. This is Artist 140 knot. Right, once we've got the lighter yellow going on, which is more of a lemon, aureolin, which is quite a sort of lemony yellow, then I'm going to add a little bit more warmth into that. Just want to get that cream going first. Go slightly more chrome across here. Start some slightly warmer yellows into some of these lighter areas where I want it to be soft at the moment. Start loose, we can finish tighter. I'm going to go a little bit more orange, a little bit of cadmium orange now down here, and even a wee touch of red, just to give the sunrise but it could equally be a sunset thinking about it. A little bit of it coming into the clouds as well. Right up into there, and as it comes up it'll get a little bit cooler, so it'll go a little bit more rose up into these clouds. There we go. It's got our light bits in for this sky. Now we want to go a bit darker. So I'm going to start coming in with the blues now. We'll start off with the thin wash of cobalt at this stage. We can make it stronger as we go on. So we'll start quite light. So this is more of a traditional technique we're doing now. Quite strong up here. Just leaving again little bits of light fluffy cloud in between that. It's still damp, so it's not spreading out too much. We've just got to control this as we go down. Get this mottled effect of this morning light that we tried to do before as well. But this time it's much lighter. We're doing a far brighter sort of scene here. So I didn't use yellow ochre at all this time, it was just the aureolin yellow, which is a bit more lemon, and then into my more warmer yellows and oranges, cadmiums, chromes. You can see I've left the white areas totally white where I want to go for my sky most of all, but I can paint the blue over this still the same here. Come back into this and drop a bit more blue in where it's a bit stronger now. We need to leave it alone a bit to dry a bit, otherwise it's going to be spreading too much. We don't want that. We can start to look at the deeper greys in that. I'm going to now take the similar mix that I did before, which is my ultramarine and the burnt sienna, to make a blue-grey. Don't want it too dark. A little bit more blue than that, so I'm going to put a bit more cobalt into it. Here we go. And bring that dark cloud through here, just delicately fluffing it in underneath these greys, right the way down to the lower part of the sky here, letting it blend in wet into wet, and comes in front of this bit, making that sky seem much, much brighter as the darks go against it. We'll drop a bit stronger colour into that shortly, to bring those bits of cloud all the way through this grey. I'll thin it down a bit, make it a little bit warmer, and up here these clouds have slightly warmer, darker edges to them. So a little bit more burnt sienna up here to these clouds. Just come out across like that. It's a very pretty sky. That burnt sienna also comes in and around these clouds here as well, and a layer above. To really look for these colours at times, they don't just appear, you've got to find them, you've got to look in your palette, you've got to look at the object you're painting hard and find these colours. Now that lovely strong purple that we're getting down here wants to be made a bit stronger. Below. Now that this paper's dry, we can go back in and take some of the blues and give slightly harder edges to the clouds, going in between and giving some texture and three-dimensional quality to them, which we couldn't do before because it was wet into wet. But now we're painting wet onto dry, so we can get these harder edges to give this speckled effect, flecked effect, and a greater depth. You can see that lovely mottled effect we can get now with those darker clouds as well. So we're going to go a little bit darker with them as well. So some of the cobalt and burnt sienna again, and we'll just come back onto these clouds and make them a fraction darker and more solid, by giving them a little harder edge and making them a little bit stronger, bringing them that way into the foreground a bit more. So we're giving a more three-dimensional effect to the whole picture. If we want to soften anything slightly, then what we've got to do is come back in with a bit of clean water and just soften the edges just a little there. These are the clouds as well, where we just need a bit more three-dimension, a little bit stronger on the colours on those as well. There we are, lovely mottled sky. Move on down now to the water. Right, now we've built up these lights and darks, let's move on to the boat. There, I think it's the blue on the top of the boat here is a much cooler blue than the rest. It's more of a cerulean blue, so we'll give it a thin coat of that all the way around there and across. You can darken that in later. Just take that down there a bit. And the hull itself is a bluey pink. So we'll use some cobalt violet with a little touch of the same blue. Coming round there quite nicely, right across into there. And then a little bit of that ultramarine at the stern. Coming round under there, and after that a tad of the same dark blue we've been using in the grey of the sky. Let that dry off. Boat's back here. I'm going to take a similar colour, a little bit of the cobalt violet, because it's against the light. All of those boats can be given a little coat of that, and then a wee touch of the darker colour into it. Let that dry off. In the meantime, now we can look at the water and the effects for the water, and they're going to be very similar to painting the sky. We've got to gradually work them up. So I'm going to start with my very light yellow, the aureolin again, and where the light of the sky is here, we need to bring that in and across into lines like that. To get the effect of the ripples. Having got that, we can go slightly warmer. I'm going to go almost straight to the cadmium orange now. Let that just blend in at the edges to a little bit of chrome yellow, and then the cadmium orange, which comes right in up and through. To get these effects of the warm sunlight coming up over that horizon, gently blending in. And then we'll take some of the same cobalt violet to bring in amongst that. At the moment I'm doing nearly all horizontals, you'll notice, not many verticals, because we don't have any actual reflections going on at the minute. From there into my blues in a moment. But before I can do the blues, I've just got to bring out these yellows a little bit more. So they come out a bit further than I thought here. In fact, that yellow is coming all the way under as a base colour here. You go right through the boats once it's dry, look. Thin wash of the cadmium yellow, linking it in. This is the beauty of this paper, because it's allowing me to blend the colours and not just suck it in, which the other paper did on the painting one before this. Now we'll start looking at the warmer colours going on. So we'll take the cobalt violet and just look at where that's coming through, gently reflecting here. giving me the soft tones. I'm starting to work a few verticals in now with these reflections. See how the evening light is now starting to reflect into the water. Whilst I'm on that pink, I'm going to put a little bit of it back into the sky here, because I figure that there's a little bit of this, which I've missed out, a little bit of this pink coming up into a slight glazing of the pink into the sky, which will help make those blues also be a bit bluer. And it's not just, as I say, horizontal strokes. We're going to get some reflections coming in the vertical strokes as well as we change these colours. Now down to the warmer blues coming into here, because now it's time to start getting these reflections coming in. Go right through up here. Those darks are, let's not worry about that because I'm going to paint dark into there later. The movement, I just want to get this gentle rippling of silver grey of the water. And let these colours just gently ripple through. If I drag these down through the mask like that at the moment, then I can bring those colours through again afterwards, getting the reflections, leaving the lights just showing. And again, we've got to plan out how far apart we're placing these ripple strokes, so that now I'm dragging one colour through into another. Now here they're quite large, these ripples. Don't want to lose our lights totally, so we're just being quite careful how much blue I put in down here. Otherwise this will just spread into it and it'll just become nothing but blue again. So just feeling my way. Still using burnt sienna and ultramarine. Comes right the way round. In fact, up and above the boat, there. Dry. Whilst I'm waiting for that to dry, I'm going to come back over the other side and make up a really dark, lovely, strong colour for that. Taking some Prussian blue, some purple, a little bit of our sienna again because it will just warm it up nicely. And that should give me a wonderful colour for this look. Go all the way along there. In fact, it wants to be even stronger than that. I'll just get that colour in for the moment and drop even stronger into it in just a moment. Really deep blue of the Prussian. We might leave a little bit of sparkle here and there in a moment. Put that on there. Drop in some more deeper blue at the top. Having said that, then we've also got the same going on down here with little bits of reed and
make the brush into a blade, start flicking in little sections down there, reflect the edge of the bits of grass and marshes. Down here we've got a bit more coming into that water. And then, once we've got that going, it's still soft at the moment, we'll let that come in as ripples the other way around. So we've done our verticals, now we're looking at the horizontals. You notice the paint is still wet, and timing is so important, because if I do this and it's too wet, it's just going to spread out and totally be lost. We don't want it to totally be lost. We don't want it to be hard edged yet either. I'm going to put a bit more of that in later with the hard edges. All I want at the moment is these soft greys and these ripples coming right down then into that area there. Inside the cabin of the boat there, underneath the bottom of that boat, reflecting down. And here, where the edge of the boat is, we start to bring this colour down and bring in again these ripples and reflections as that comes out very dark there and a little bit warmer. So I'm going to add a bit more brown to that just there, and that's most of our soft colours done. So we need to let it dry a bit now so that we can come back with harder edges and clearer bits of the ripples later when it's a little bit drier. It's time to use the rigger again now and put in some of these very darks for the masts and rigging. In this case I can do it a bit thicker there and just bring those colours over and let the light reflect on that outer edge. It's a rigging brush that I'm using now, so it enables me to do these fine lines. And there we are, a nice moody watercolour, which I think is about as far as you want to take it now. Just lift a little bit out of there, a little bit too much blue just in that one spot. That'll do it. I've done most of the basic drawing here. I'm just putting in a little bit of masking fluid this Pelibo drawing gum that I like, the blue one, so that it shows out, the grey one, it shows out against the white paper so we can just see where things are. And odd little spots of where light's reflecting. And I'm going to just tint the drawing. I'm going to make, if you like, a coloured drawing so that we have these dark areas I don't have to paint in with the brush. I might go in and darken them a little bit later, but I think the paint will go over these well enough and just get this lovely effect of the morning sunrise and luminosity. And when the whole thing is dry, we can rub away these light areas. I'm going to try a bit of dry brush work here as well anyway. A set of watercolours, but I suspect the ones I'm going to mainly need will be these golds and yellows, a little bit of the red maybe. So this area of the palette, and just some of the blues over here and purples. Water, a nice large oval mop, and a little tiny round. The only two brushes I suspect we'll need. Finish with the drawing gum now, some clean water. Okay, we're going to be doing graduated and variegated washes on this. And we're going to try and do a little bit of dry brush work around there and just pull out these colours a little bit more detail. So what I'm going to do is start with this bluer area here, and I'm going to mix up some cobalt blue. I want to make the colours fairly strong in most of this. So I want to prepare these colours first, so here's my cobalt blue, nice blue for the sky up here in this area, and I want to prepare some of the golds. I'm going to be running through slightly purple into it as well, so I'm going to have my cobalt violet ready because I want to link a bit of that in with it. So I'll put a bit of water into that and just get it mixed ready for the graduated washes. And we're painting slightly downhill on this painting, as you can see, so it's going to be running down just a little bit. I should have prepared enough of that. We want fairly strong colour for this, as I'm saying, because it will dry lighter anyway. Clean that brush off a bit. Just go back to my cobalt. I don't think I should want any darker than that. Right, clean my brush off, and now prepare some of these golden yellows. I'm going to start with the chrome yellow here and then come into the cadmium orange afterwards. So I mix a nice amount of chrome yellow, and it's in fact the chrome yellow that I'll probably start with. So what I'm going to do is take some of that chrome yellow and come across into here, and where that bird is here, there's a light area going on above here. It's quite light there. In fact, I'm going to thin that down quite a lot there. Just bring it all the way around in a circle. Now I want to start blending out with water, because we're going to be able to make the sunshine effect of this. This paper actually is very absorbent. Carrying on then with that, coming outwards from it, quite bright, letting it soak into there. And then not so long afterwards we'll just hit a little bit of this cobalt violet and let that come in. Might seem a strange colour, but we'll let that come into it here. Then we'll come back to the chrome yellow, coming on down around, letting that link into this. This paper really is very absorbent and is not giving me much leeway to blend the paint. And I want to come into the cadmium orange. It's lovely cadmium orange here. And go right the way along the bottom edge, all the way along here. right the way across the painting. And it really is very strong, especially across here. So I'm going to make it much stronger over there. And I'm working in the reverse. Really I should be painting this upside down, I guess, in a way. Gradually getting lighter as it comes up. Take some more of that yellow and bring that in down here. I want to really let these colours sing brightly. And as I come up, I don't want these lines in it. As I say, this paper's tremendously absorbent and it's not giving me an easy time by any means. We'll bring some more of that beautiful cobalt violet in down here, going on around this bit. And then as quickly as possible we'll take our wash of the cobalt blue, that's this one, and link that in up here so that it spreads down through into that cobalt violet. Do a complete wash of that, coming all the way in here. Take her back to the cobalt violet again, just bring that in around this top edge. Back to the cobalt blue, all the way along quickly as we can and down, because this paper's a bit like blotting paper. It's rather old and been travelling around in the suitcases and things, and it's not working all that well for me, but we'll have a go with it. Quite mix enough of the cobalt blue, so I'm having to just mix a bit more as I go along. And this is staining a bit here, so I want to just bring that in. And I'm going to come now back to the cobalt violet, come into my sky with a wash of that all the way around here. Plenty of colour. And we'll just bring that in a little bit, like the rays of sunlight coming into the painting, around, down. Now I've got that colour in, I can afford to come back up and just add a bit more of this yellow into the... I'm being very strong with the colours here, to the whole thing there. And come back in with that cobalt violet as well, coming down into it. Really play with these colours. Soften the edge of the white there just a little bit. I shan't be able to lift with this, I can see that. And I want to go a little bit darker up into the sky, so I'm going to mix a little bit of the ultramarine now. I don't think I was going to have to, but a little bit of rose into that as well, just to go a bit purpler up in the sky up here. So ultramarine, a little bit of rose. While this is still wet, then we'll come in with that, blending that downwards to really get feeling of this bright sun rising. Go back to that corner as well. Right, now we come down the water itself. At this, we're coming down, we've done all this area, we're going to come down through here now. And as I say, although this paper is not being very forgiving to me at all, I'm going to start with the chrome yellow again, all the way through here. just leave a little bit of light shining at the top. You can see it's so the paper's just like blotting paper. It's not given me any leeway whatsoever. It's been very unforgiving. And the dry brush work, we're just going to feel the edge of this a bit here and not totally take all the lights out. We'll start to bring the oranges of this in now, cadmium orange, right through. Much stronger, beautiful deep reds, orangey reds going on. I'd like to try this painting again sometime with better paper. Doesn't matter if we go over the dark bit we're going to paint later here, because close up and try some of this dry brush work just a bit through here, because we're going to paint the dark bit in over the top of this light anyway, so it really doesn't affect it much. Down these edges, right the way through there. And back to the cadmium orange, a bit more subtle, and back to our cobalt violet again, which I do want quite a bit of in here as well, because that's going on quite a lot through here, especially up on this edge. You can see we're able to just play with this dry brush work. Play with this dry brush work just a bit here. Really plonk in some of this lovely cobalt violet across the colours. Cobalt violet, lovely colour to use. Cobalt violet comes right up through into here. It's going to go back to our blues again, so back to the cobalt blue again. Mix up a fair amount quick. There's a slightly greener tint down here in the lower part of the picture. So I may even use a little bit of cerulean coming into here as well. Let's get it in. When we're coming into it, there's these ripples and waves, so I'm just going to paint in little lines as I link in, as if the waves are coming through. Back up into here, some cerulean, and these lines of blue along the top here. To our cobalt with a little bit of ultramarine, and now I'm also going to put in a little bit of viridian green. Because it's a bit greener down here, and it will really give that sun some vibrance as well. And happening up here, these greens are coming in too. Just flicking in the colours. Do some vertical strokes as well as horizontals to get the feeling of the reflections. A little bit warmer, we'll add a little bit of rose in now. Just come a bit warmer around these areas where the sun is gleaming down and in. Now these dark areas here, very deep purple, so I'm going to take the rose first. Take the rose first, and where it comes through here, we'll just paint that in there. And up here as well, the top edge. Comes all the way through to here. Little bits of little birds and things and all sorts of roughage at the top there. Now we need some very deep purple. We're going to drop it in the same way, smack into it, you see, lovely, just let the wet into wet do the job to get these beautiful effects of light. And into that still, the cool, we'll take some deep Prussian blue and we'll drop that in there as well to make real darks at the background. Now let me let that dry a bit because we're going to be doing the birds. Though we've drawn them in, I hoped it would be dark enough. It certainly isn't. But whilst it's still drying, I want to work on these areas just a little bit more. Come back in with some more ultramarine blue, a little more of the green, a bit of sap green this time. Down here. Really push these colours a little bit further. And a wee touch of warm coming into them too. Lift a little bit of that out there, and into it drop some cadmium. Because of where the light shines through there. We're using a bit more opaque paint now. The effects of these colours being, this paper being as it is, it's allowing me to paint more thickly than I would normally do. How damp is that? It's still fairly wet. I need to come along the top edge now. So a little bit of these very deep greens and blues. We need to come along that top edge. With the purple. It just breaks through here, just breaks through the sunlight just a bit. Bringing in some more cobalt, bringing in some more colour, stronger and stronger, more opaque with this paper is not allowing anything else. Look at these really dark areas each side of the sun there. And the seabirds that are in the deep blue dots going along here. So we really get that vibrancy of colour. Right, we let that dry at that and we'll go back in and paint the seabirds in a moment. I'm going to come back now with these birds, and for the birds we'll use a very, very deep purple. This paper is, as I say, it's tending to spread a bit, so we don't want too much of that. I was hoping that the pencil would be enough, but actually it's turning out that because the paint is having to go on so thickly, I'm going to have to go over it again and put these in. Little bits of dark on the water surface that needs to be catching the light as well. Before we do anything about putting pastel on, we have to remove these bits of masking fluid that we put on earlier. And that basically, in this case, is a watercolour finish with. And we're ready to start playing with some pastel. So we need to tidy up this detail a bit more now. As you can see, the paint spread so much in this particular painting of watercolour there was very little control. And to do that I'm going to use these lovely unison pastels, which are my favourite. In the original watercolour I expected, without this paper acting like blotting paper as it has done, I would have had a lovely soft wet into wet effect here, which would have just blended in. What I'm going to do is come back with the white chalk or white pastel and just bring that over slightly by a little bit of blending and just using the paper surface. You can use the effect of the rougher paper to pick up on the little highlights. You've got some of the sparkle and glow that we lost with it soaking in so fast. And most of these colours we can virtually match up, look. We bring this painting back into the atmosphere that we really intended. So it's been quite a good way to show you an example of how if something goes wrong you can still bring it back again. Really look for these colours still. Now we've got the pastels to work with as well, we can afford to play a bit more again. And we'll try and find the blues that we lost here as well. Well, I feel like a change now, painting so many of these garden scenes with figures in them. I thought I'd like to do a landscape. We've got the snow coming down and the frost about. And just to refresh a bit, rather than keep doing the same old things and become a bit stale, much as I enjoy them, we'll have a go at this landscape. And it's not far from here, but the snow's just been falling across a ploughed field. And we've got the light shining in bands across the fields and the ploughed field in the distance. And the beautiful thing about these skies here, a bit like Holland, we have these lovely big luscious cloudy skies. So that's what we're going to make the most of with soft unison pastels. That's these pastels. We'll use some of these. And straight onto the paper, blocking and blending, the old English method, so it'll be very rapid and very direct, and I hope great fun. Not going to draw it out, just a very little bit of light chalk to start with, just to show where I'm going to be working, and then straight in with the colour, blocking and blending.
And here's my selection of unison pastels in their box. It's a choice I've made over many years and find I can make these colours suit almost anything I want to paint. The only colours I tend to add to these are some inscribed pastels, which are much cheaper but have very bright garish colours, and those can be very useful indeed for flowers. Okay, we've got our unison pastels ready. I've got a tin of beer ready, keep myself going in between, and our paper and our photographs. So let's take a very light coloured pastel and just mark out, we use a very light grey for the moment, just mark out where we want things. Now, on here on the photograph, that's halfway.
just lightly mark the photograph so I know where I'm going. If we look at the photograph, that's halfway, that's a quarter. So if we mark the paper the same, that's halfway, that's a quarter. So approximately a quarter down, all the way across here, we're going to have our horizon line. That gives us plenty of room for a nice big sky. And looking at this, trees, halfway, just about halfway. I looked at this earlier and thought it's sometimes unwise to have something exactly on a halfway, but we're going to have this house almost exactly on the halfway, just here. And that means there's a load of trees going on behind it, to about there, back down to here. To work on the horizon first, on some of those deeper areas of cloud. There's some quite dark areas going on back here. A nice deep purple mauve going on behind the woodland there. The first thing I've got to do is block and blend. I've got to get rid of this texture, which I don't like. This I should really use to the side of the pastel paper, because this is the orange peel side that I'm not really that keen on, even though that's the side the name's on, which usually denotes the working surface. It does have a watercolour paper. On the watercolour paper, if you've got the name of something there, like Bockingford or Waterford, that will mean that's the side you're supposed to work on. I'm going to blend it in at first and make it quite a dead colour. And I'm going to come back and work onto it. This isn't a standard size I work on, being as it's a piece of sugar paper, an entire sheet of proper pastel paper. It's not a standard template that I use for my mount, so I'll have to cut a mount for this one if I finish it and I'm happy with it. Let's just try out one or two colours all the way across and round here, just feeling our way to try and get the right colours. Yes, I really don't like the surface of this paper at all. I would have been better off on the other side of it, I can see. Don't like the orange peel effect at all. We can blend these colours and merge them as we go along. This is why I take the papers off, so that I can work across the side of the pastel as quickly as possible to block in areas and not have to pussyfoot about with the tip of the pastel. So I'm just mixing up the base colours on my paper at the moment. And we'll work other colours over the top as we go along. And it kills it, because pastels work by the fact that you're using very tiny crystals of pastel. The pigment is in this crystal form, it's like a very fine powder, and when you put it on nice and fresh it sparkles and catches the light. But when you blend it, it smudges it, it smooths it down, it kills it, it takes away that sparkle. So we can put on our first coats like this, but our final coats want to be nice and bright and light, and literally the last coats. I'm just getting rid of the paper at the moment to find my working surface. Just establish these colours for the moment. Very deep blues. If I start with my pastel wide, I can twist it so that it goes narrower and comes up into the thinner triangle look. And I can use the texture of the paper now to get some of the effect of this, I will use it on, of this plough. So it's not a brown ploughed field, it's lots of other colours as well. In this case we've got the purple, the brown and the deep blue going in to get the effects first of all. We just work these little bits back until it blends into the texture of the paper, makes it look like distance. There's a variety of grey cools going along here, so I've got to gradually work these blues up. And just begin now to see how we can build this up. I'm blending in these fluffy cloud effects one into another. Stronger in places again than others. These lovely turquoise blues now can certainly give you the effects that you're looking for with the blues. Just scumbling slightly, let's not overdo it. Sunlight shining across the field. Using a blue in the distance. We could use a bright green, we'll come to those stronger colours at the very end. We're keeping to the blues in the distance, which is always the best way to start off. We know that the atmosphere should give us a blue in the distance. So we're getting the different layers of cloud now. Against the cools and the warms. Bits of frost and snow on the texture of the paper. It goes back. It's quite a complicated little picture, and all these details are going to be a problem, but I'm not worried about that too much yet. And the sunlight's just catching those trees a little bit there, making that warm, that brown, a little browner on that edge. With perspective a little bit, because I suspect our central vanishing point is going to be somewhere around there. We can bring some lines out from there, giving the effect of a little bit of perspective. Even back to the almost slightly pink colour that's just coming over these trees here. Now the sun's catching over the lovely fluffy light. Snow, storm clouds. I want to be getting this in, but I want to use a very light cream just to put in this farm building here, which is vital to this picture. It's just a little bit of white and cream, which is so important, just catching the light here. And we have to hope it doesn't get smudged afterwards, because that is a very important piece of the picture. I'm gradually building it up. I'm keeping the whole picture going. I'm not just working on one part, as you hopefully notice. I'm keeping the whole painting going at one go. Not just finishing one bit and thinking, oh, that's it, because I have to keep relating one colour to another to make this work. And you play with these colours, having little bits of red going on back there to really make that sunlight appear to catch in there. Maybe a little bit of the same coming in here. We've really got to look for these colours. To mix these colours to get them right. You can see where the light's coming from there to come across the house. Let's work up into here. Some of these light colours and inks going on into there now. And it gives me a little break from doing these oils and garden scenes. It's nice to do different things. People say, what's my favourite way of painting? I don't have a favourite. Hopefully I enjoy doing whatever I do. And they're all for different reasons, and different purposes and different effects. And just playing between these different blues and greys. Before I do too much more on this, I really do need to get back to working on down here, And on the snow is we'll put the warmer ones in. I'll just show you. We'll come in with these warmer ones. Look, little bits of cream amongst the cool to just catch that light coming across them, so you can see how it'll work. I'll carry on with the very, very light blue first of all. And it's all the way across here, little dots. There's quite a bit of work to do on this one. We can't get away with it with special techniques, I don't think, very easily. We're going to have to work and put it in, gradually getting the feeling of these going right the way back. Just tickling them in till they go all the way back to distance. If we get right back there, then we can look at the shadows in fact being a bit cooler and actually use a cooler blue, I reckon. Back here into those shadowed areas and just enhance this business of the perspective, giving this a feeling of leading in the eye into that field a bit more. And now let's come back to that cream we were talking about and start to put some of those little light areas in to catch this sunlight on the edge of these frosty little lumps of tilled soil. Maybe go a little lighter still in places at the very foreground. A pure white coming in. Push those clouds back a bit. And we're not far off finishing. You've seen how quickly that's been built up. Just to bring the eye forward, bring the picture forward. So we link one thing to another. It doesn't become just foreground, middle distance. We do have a linkage between the colours. Just tidy this sky up a fraction. I'm going to go back into the foreground here and put a little bit more dark into places. Just again to try and bring that forward a fraction. It'll also give me a colour to sign it with as well. These little things that can either make or break a painting now, so do this little bit of tidying up. The cold winter light of a Lincolnshire beach. Yes, it's a beautiful luminosity, and let's see if we can capture that by using oils fat over lean onto some hardboard that's been primed. I've put together a composite of some photographs that I've taken, and we're going to use a style that's a little bit more finished and photographic this time. I'm going to show you how to blend with a fan brush as well to do that. So instead of painting in my usual style like this, impressionist, broken colour and very bright and vibrant, we're going to paint much more softly.
Right, today we're going to work on a long rectangular piece of
this one, which is going to be two photographs composited together of the beach just down here in winter, and I'm also going to put a couple of seals into the left here. And this is one of the beauties of using the computer, is that we can play around with these compositions beforehand to get the right idea.
Now the different brushes I'm going to use today, I should only need 3 brushes. I'm going to use my little filbert here, a long handled nylon, a little flat for the find work. I may need a very small pointed later, but I'm hoping not. And most of all today this example is going to be about using this fan brush here. Now the traditional way of using this in oils is for soft blending, for blending clouds together, as we're going to be doing here and down the bottom. Now the work you've seen me doing a lot of in the past has been very impressionist, and like these examples here has been broken colour, little short strokes, which of course we can do little short strokes with these brushes. But this one really, in watercolour it's great for painting trees because we can use it and twist it and go around painting all the branches and leaves, and we can do the same with oils, but the traditional way of using these was to blend clouds and to blend shapes and colours. And that's what we're going to do here. We're going to paint onto this white hardboard, which will soak the paint in. We've already hand tinted our own frame because I bought this just for a matter of pounds from a local junk shop, and we can do frames up from those very often to make them look really nice and impressive and save some money, because framing these days of course is very expensive. So we shall be blending all of these colours together softly in almost a photographic effect, not such a chunky painterly effect as usual, to show you how we can blend oils with the brush. Painting thinly at first, which will soak into the hardboard, and then getting thicker as we go along and blending softly in until we get a soft, very atmospheric, realistic, almost photographic painting. Well, we have 3 different blues in our palette already that will help do this. We've got cerulean for the cooler, more turquoise areas down here. Then we've got the cobalt and the ultramarine for the stronger blues up here. We can also, of course, change those colours and make them even greener by adding some more yellow. So I'm going to start with my little oval, and we'll work from our lights to our dark tones here. We'll work straight in with these ceruleans, with a little bit of cream into them, and then we'll work in the various mid-greys, and we'll blend those at the end. So I'll just very quickly show you how we're going to work those paints up. I'm going to start with white in nearly all cases on my brush and mix up some cerulean blue with that white, and we'll leave the clouds behind that we're going to paint, and we're going to paint those in afterwards. So we've got this very light cerulean blue and white thin coat soaking straight into this white emulsioned primer I've done, which gives us the lean, and we're going to put the fat paint, the heavier paint, over the top afterwards, right down to here. I'm going to make this a bit yellower later on as well, and this blue gets stronger as it goes up here. So we've built up now some cobalt blue into the ultramarine because the cobalt blue is a little bit warmer, and you see I'm getting darker and darker and stronger with this blue as I come up. So the cobalt blue is warmer than the cerulean, and I'm just feathering it in, blending it in gradually to get a smooth surface, one colour coming into another here. And as I come up I'm going to get stronger still with those blues, more blue in other words, stronger still with the blue look, and eventually there'll be even a little bit of ultramarine coming up into here, because we want this effect of the atmosphere and this lovely winter east coast clear light. The board takes the paint very well, soaks it into the surface so you can add onto it afterwards. It's quite nice to get the slightly directional stroke as well as if the light is coming down from one angle. Don't be afraid to scumble, that is, rub the surface with the paint into other areas. Now let's take a little bit of the ultramarine, which is one of our strongest blues. We're up here, and that's as strong as we're going to go. A little bit of white into that because it's still a bit too dark. It's a very light picture, it's a very airy, atmospheric light picture. So plenty of that ultramarine, but with some white now. Up here, and right down and through, and we'll even mix a little bit of the cerulean into that in a minute, just to bring that very lovely turquoisey feeling of the East Coast light back into this picture. So I'm just going to cover it for the moment. This is my fat layer, this is my thin layer underneath, and we're going to put the fatter layers over the top, and it soaks in so quickly into this board. It's not actually drying, but it's soaking in that I can work layers over the top fairly easily. As I say, don't be afraid to come over your clouds a bit here, because we're going to be painting the light over the darks. And I'm going to do the whole sky like this shortly. This is just to give you an idea of how it's done. Right the way along. there's just a little bit of white showing where the clouds will come there, that's all. Right up into here, right through. I'm going to go back to that turquoise of my cerulean and take some of that stronger cerulean blue and actually bring that back up into here and just feather it into that blue to let one colour glow through another. It's not impressionism, it's not broken colour in this case, or hardly, because I'm actually blending those colours more together. All I'm doing is getting a little bit of this cool blue with the warmer blue and then coming down into the cooler light areas below, like that, which gives us this lovely luminous effect of the light into the distance. And we can just feather that in. Now, if I take my fan brush now and a little bit of terps on it, I can blend that in softly. You see how that works? And we'll do more of this with the clouds later, but I can blend that in with the fan with little tiny soft strokes. So it is in a way broken colour in a very miniature way though. Blend all of that in to get this effect of light. I'm going to do that all the way across the painting now. So let's get these very light creams in over here as the light shines over the horizon. So this is my lemon yellow and white and a little touch of the blue cerulean, which is our cool blue over here. A fairly creamy paint I'm painting on, don't make it too terpsy. Nice and light. That comes all the way across, and then these little clouds here start to get bluer, but it's still fairly light, so keep the white going in it. Mix some more white back into that on the board itself. And a nice cheerful painting, even though it's a winter's day. See how it's soaking into the board fairly quickly. Now I bring some more of that cerulean back in again. Pure cerulean. It's quite strong up here. More terps into it. And we'll come back with our fan brush. A little bit of terps on it. And we'll just blend it all in together. So another technique for showing you, which we'll use more of later when we actually start painting the clouds, but we just want to make sure everything is blended at the moment. Right, that's our blues done. Now we've got to start mixing the greys for the clouds of that blue with a little yellow ochre, and a touch of rose, just to get a warm yellowy grey going on in the background here, almost greeny grey. I'm going to add a little bit more rose to the colour just to get a bit more warmth into that background. Look how lovely that is with that greeny blue, giving us this distant. A lot of the work can be done with the brush that we're using. We don't have to use the fan brush all that much. It was just to give you an idea of how it could be done. Now we're going to do some lovely bluey purples coming across here. And we can make those browner and warmer and greyer in a moment by adding some yellow and a little bit of burnt sienna, I suspect. But at the moment I just want to get these lovely fluffy blue purples. So we're going to take some ultramarine and add a little burnt sienna to that, which will give us a much deeper or warmer grey for these darker clouds here. So I'm going to link in later on and blend in a bit more with the fan brush, as I was saying to you. This is now getting, the darker we make this, the lighter the sky is going to seem, so this is another reason for doing this. All of that white's going to go eventually, because we're going to have a few lighter colours, but not as light as this, not as white as that.
It may look very dark and sombre now because we haven't got the lighter areas in there, but it will come back to life once I start painting in the pinks and the lighter greys. What to do is establish mid-tones at the moment and the darker greys. And back to our yellowy greeny grey again. You may even come round with a bit more blue into here again yet, just to bring it back again. It's a very busy sky. It's one of the reasons I chose this one, because we've got such a lovely busy sky here. I'll take a little bit of chrome yellow now, try a bit more warmth to this lower sky. But it's actually fairly warm, so I'm going to come back now to the yellow ochre and white. It's a nice warm yellow, and into that I'm going to even put a little bit of rose in a moment. Let's just get this colour going first. Just look at where these lighter bits of cloud are. There's quite a lot of colour in here. I want a touch of the rose, of a red, into that, just to give us a bit more pink in there. That's better. Look at that warmth and what that does. It makes the blues start to sing out. That warmth up into there as well. This winter sun just gleaming into these soft fluffy clouds that are bouncing across here. So we see the three-dimensional quality of getting, even just using these blocks of colour without blending them too much. It's a great way to paint, and oftentimes, and many would want to just leave this rough and ready as it is now without going into smoothing things out, which I'm going to do in a moment. When we get the darker colours down below, this will show lighter and make more sense still. And it's a little bit browner up higher, so I'm going to take a touch of burnt sienna and yellow ochre, just to give a slightly warmer grey with the blue up here. We've got some slightly warmer tones in the clouds going on up into there, as you can now see. So these are going to draw the eye forward and make the other colours seem cooler. Rough next to smooth, light next to dark, warm next to cool. These are some of our armoury of colours and ways of working and tones to make things stand out better. If we have the rough next to the smooth, the rough seems rougher and the smooth seems smoother. If I put these warmer colours in here now, then the cooler colours again will seem cooler and the other greys will work even better. So we get these lovely effects of the, not a sunset, but almost with this winter weather, it's almost sort of such low light that it's almost as if the light is about to fade down. Now, this is where our fan brush is going to come in. I've already done quite a lot of blending with that filbert. My round artificial sable, nylon sable, which is nice. Now I'm going to come back with the fan brush and just put a little bit of terps on just to get it working, and let's soften in these areas. Let's just now blend them in, swirl them round a bit and get these soft effects for the clouds without them being too larger brush strokes. So you can see how we can use the fan to just gently soften these edges together if that's the effect you want. So you may want to leave it really rough and ready, or you may want to just blend them in a bit more as I'm doing here to make maybe a softer sky effect with your fan brush, so we don't have quite such strong brush strokes and it's all a little bit softer under an effect of light. There we go then, that's that sky about done. Right, next we need to come down to the landscape, so we'll concentrate on this area where the seals are here for the minute and just paint these darker tones in there.
obviously the colours down here are going to be stronger than up here, which is what's going to make those look lighter. So I'm going to use at the moment some yellow ochre, and we'll paint around these objects. The woman and the dog that I've got in the photograph, we're going to paint him later. The actual seaweed here is quite warm, but the colour coming down here is a cooler colour, although it's got some warm in it. So we've got a sort of greeny yellow happening. Let's have a look at that, that's better. Now let's just try some of that coming down here. We're going to paint a darker line in between there in a moment. Just paint that coming down, this greeny yellow colour coming right down through here. We'll see how immediately it makes the sky look lighter because it's darker than the sky. And it's, like I said, dark against light, warm against cool, and rough against smooth. And then it becomes more purpley, a cooler colour altogether down here. We'll take a little bit of purple and add that into that. So it's got this slight purple tint coming down actually into the edge of that. And just letting the colours blend one into another all the way down there. And in fact it starts to come across here as well. And I'm going to do a bit of underpainting now and use this colour, put some light on top of this later, use this colour to do my horizon way across here for the sea, because I'm going to put light in there later. And it's all the way down. A little bit of purple into that, tad of white, just to lighten it slightly. There we go. We get this blue-grey that is all pervading, which we can link more colours into, blend them into afterwards. Let's just get rid of this white board at the moment, and we can see wood for trees, as they say. We can just see what's going on properly then. That's why I use a coloured ground a lot of the time, is because I don't like just this white surface. We need to get colour on. Cobalt blue into that. Look at that lovely grey we get. So that was a little alizarin, cobalt blue, and some purple, a tiny touch of purple, and yellow ochre to give us this warm dark grey of this sand. And of course this warm colour, using plenty of terps here to spread it out and soak it all in, that lovely warmth of colour will help to draw the eye forward and push these blue greys into the background. Letting the brush just scumble over the top. Finished using our fan brush now. We shan't do that again. I just did that for the sky. What we're using now is my 1/2 inch filbert soft, just to draw these darker lines in. And not very warm, in fact deep purpley warm. It's coming in as lumps of seaweed up here. Got little bits of these warmer tads of seaweed coming right down into behind the seals. Let's really go a bit darker in there. Now look how dark that goes, you see. Let that just come down. Roughly in the background, just feeling this edge of this hedge. They seemed very dark earlier on, but now we're actually putting in some of these darker colours here. Those bits are seeming a lot lighter. You can start to blend some of these darks over here as well. Use your terps now. Thin coats now of just almost like watercolour, just glazing some of these dark strips across. Get the feel of these bands of mud and sand and bits of weed and stuff that are happening over here. An impression now of these bits of weed, grass, and this sort of late afternoon, cold winter, low light. We've got quite a low light in here. I'll paint details like the figure and stuff on top later. Let's just get these background darks and shades of blue-greys established, receding into the distance there. You can begin to see now how these bands of colour are going to operate and work, giving us this aerial perspective. Linear would be drawn perspective, as in an X shape to a one-point vanishing point, but this is use of different warms and cools to get the feeling of the sand and the land going back in colour. At the moment those seals are standing out like a sore thumb, so I want to go back and at least get some colour onto those in a moment, just to get them out of the way, if nothing else. Right, let's have a look at those seals. And just get a base coat down, even if nothing much more. We'll use a bit of yellow ochre and a touch of pink, just to get a basic tone onto those. Thinly, this nice thin wash of oil, just to get rid of the white. And then Mr. Seal down here as well, he wants a bit of work just to get him tinted in, get rid of that white. So lying there slightly camouflaged by the need to put a bit more of the water around him, I think, to make him stand out. And maybe he's lying in a bit of water there, so we'll just lighten that area. It's wet around there. Lines up a little bit and start to bring warms to the front, the way that the light shines across this slightly oily and wet seal fur. Once we've established some of our tones like that, we can start to look at these lighter areas here that are going to be part of the joy of painting, and of course these are reflecting these colours above. So we need to make some more of that lovely blue and yellows and blues, and just look at where they're coming. We know that we've got some lighter areas there against the seal. How painting in these lights, which is the fun part of it, suddenly brings the thing back to life. You can see how I'm using the surface of the brush marks that I've painted on my priming of the board to let the paint come dryly over the top and just catch them. So I'm not painting straight into it. I've got to be careful here because we need to get a thin line here that leaves a little dark edge at the top, because these sand flats have these areas of reflective wet sand and water, but also have the dark areas. And suddenly the painting starts to make sense, doesn't it? So we're using lemon yellow and white to get the cream with a little touch of cerulean, and now I'm using even more of the cerulean into it to get the blues coming on down here in the foreground. And then as it comes through there, there's a bit more of the pink. You can see now we're using a few vertical strokes as well to start to get the feeling of the reflections on the sand. So we've built up our underpainting. One of the things with painting water is not to just paint all horizontals, is to actually look at when there are a series of verticals in the water, and tend to paint the verticals actually first of all and go back with the horizontals over the top maybe afterwards at times. Get the feeling of wetness around the sand of these on these seals as well. And some of the even warmer browns coming in here, which will make those cools seem cooler in the background again. And give us that acidy warmth that would be rather nice to get. An effect of glistening light from the evening coming on down through these soft sands. We don't want to overdo these seals. I mean, the whole idea of them is that they are hiding away there. We don't see too much of them. Okay, let's look at these small figures up here, and all I need for that is a clean brush for a start, and then I think we need the Prussian blue to make that very dark again, and a little touch of the brown just to warm it a fraction. And where do they come? Right, about here, about a quarter of the way up, so 1 1/4 here and 1/4, so they're just inside a quarter, so they're about there, which makes sense. Yes, we've got the figure, the woman about here. It gives the whole thing a lot of different scale, because now we paint that in like that, coming down to her waist, and then her arm commanding the dog, and the other one just coming out like that. Almost made that too pleb there, so I have to be careful. And her legs and down. Keep the shapes simple. Simplify the shapes. Boots are there, just catching into the water, and then below that they reflect a little bit. Front of her face. You come back to the jeans, and we'll use some of our cobalt blue. And we've got our figure. And then her headscarf. I'm just going to go back around her hand slightly, because when I did that I just caught the brush just slightly, and I want to make that hand a bit smaller. That's it. Now a headscarf, which is a chrome yellow, darkened down slightly. And there she is, that's all we're going to need there. And the dog next, same dark. The dog's back a bit about here. And we've got the 2 legs. We needn't even draw this in, we'll just go straight for it. The body. Coming forward of the dog, going back there, back legs, don't make dog too small. And the tail coming out. If your brush isn't quite there, well, use the end of it just to bite back in there. It's just standing because it's slightly darker in places along there, just to make it stand out a bit more, give her a bit more. We're going to have the occasional little bit of mess or rock or weed on here as well. It just gives it that perspective, that bit of aerial perspective, that plains I was talking about as we go back. I've got to get some of these warms here that we did earlier on a little bit stronger, and looking a bit more like it's weed coming down closer to us. We'll use some of these blues just to look up here a bit where the light's catching with the sand and making it a bit cooler back there, so that we push that, link this together, because at the moment there's almost a feeling of 2 paintings going on here, and we don't want that. The whole thing has to be linked together. Now we're almost there then. Just a word about this seal here, because it's standing out a bit too much still. So it's supposed to be a part of the picture, not taking it over. I'm not sure whether we need a bit more cool on there or not. Let's have a look and see if we need to actually push that seal back a bit and make him a bit cooler and just catch the light on it. Let's soften those back into there a bit, look. Just lying there in the half light. Don't want to be standing out too much. Just a few more highlights. This water up here used to be a bit lighter, catching the light a bit. We can take a look at that figure. The texture of the paint, which we've used the board on. We've used the fan brush on the sky, and we've used the texture of the primer to dry brush work across the expanse of sand down to those seals. And you can see across the paintwork now to the figure and the dog.
A lovely sunny day in summer, late July 2011. Here we are then out on plein air, which I love to do. Much nicer to go out and actually paint on site and in situ than working in the studio. All I need for this painting is my travelling easel, small palettes of my oil paints and a couple of pieces of MDF. We're going to paint directly onto the MDF without any primer whatsoever. I start by making a thin moss of ultramarine using a round brush to just draw in my basic composition. Then I usually start at the horizon, as that's where most of the mid-tones are, and I make a mix of cerulean blue and a little bit of rose for the area just above the horizon where it's warm and building up to the clouds. Then I can either add some cerulean and lemon yellow, but in this case I've added a little bit of emerald green to then bring this warm green into a slightly cooler, more greener colour. On a bright sunny day like this, it usually means we have very bright lights and very dark shadows. Also, the sky becomes warmer and warmer the higher up it gets into the atmosphere. So we start with our cooler greens and blues in the sky and then work up to the much warmer ones at the top with ultramarine and even a little purple. The MDF absorbs the first coats of oil paint very quickly, so it's a lovely technique to be able to paint the fat over the lean, painting thinly with a bit of terps at first, almost in washes, and then very rapidly building up over that, small feathering brush strokes. My next layer of blue in the sky is almost pure cerulean blue. And then above that I gradually add some cobalt and eventually up to ultramarine and even a little bit of purple or rose into that to make the height of the sky and the depth of the warmth. The clouds are made up of white and yellow ochre with a little touch of the pinks going into it. And then making warm and cool greys for underneath the clouds by the use of our cobalt and a little touch of the rose. Also a little bit of burnt sienna. Once we've painted the sky, we can come down to the water and simply mirror the sky in the water, because that's all that's happening. I usually start with my vertical strokes in the water and then work my horizontal strokes across that is the ripples and reflections across the surface. So the in-depth of the water, the deeper colours and the shadows and the colours reflecting from the sky, and then any ripples or wind or surface textures across the surface of the water come in afterwards. Finally coming across to the bank sides, where we look at the variation of warm and cool greens. In a picture like this, on a day like this, we normally have warm in the foreground, cool in the background, detail in the foreground and more out of focus into the background. Very few brushes are needed. I can get away normally with just using my filberts, and by turning the filbert onto its edge and making it into a blade, I can paint some thinner lines and scumble and make textures, and then finish off with my round brushes or riggers at the end. I'm painting in my usual method and impressionist style of the jigsaw method, where we put the right colours relevant to each other in the right shapes and places. Gradually then, as each shape is made, the jigsaw comes together and the picture appears. If you start loosely in this method, you can finish as tight as you want. You can go as fine with your detail and photographic as you wish at the very end. If we start loose, we can finish tight. Can't do the opposite, can't start tight and finish loose. So the idea is to not only enjoy the moment, but capture that moment, capture that time and hour of day, capture the feeling in an effect of light. This film isn't speeded up at all. This is the actual speed that I work at and enjoy doing.
Well, in this new series of painting Lincolnshire scenes, I had to paint this one of a plough scene, which was going on just outside the back garden the other day. And I made a composite. I've moved things around a bit, and I'm going to take some more buildings and put them in here as well, and also change the foreground here and add some more greenery and a tree going to the left. Change the composition around a bit. I'm going to use this particular tractor, and then at the end of it all I'm going to add some seagulls coming in to take the worms and things that the plough is ploughing up. But before I start that, let's just look at all these various greys we can mix. Let's look at this limited palette of colours. We've got here some black, which I don't normally use, but with this limited palette I will. Black, Prussian blue, ultramarine blue, a little purple, some chrome yellow, cerulean blue, white, burnt sienna, cadmium red, and some magenta. And that's all I'm going to need to make a lot of different greys. Greys are basically made from brown and blue, so it's the primary and tertiary colours. Now we can make many variations of grey, and if we look at this particular cloud effect here, if I want to make some warmer greys, as I've got here, browny greys, or bluer greys, or yellowy greys, let's just look how we can mix those before we even start. So before we get into painting that sky, I'm going to show you how these can be made. We'll start with the lighter colours here. When you're making a light colour, always start with the white, not the darker colour, and add a little bit to the white to make a light colour. You see, very, very light. If you start with the colour and add the white, you'll need tons of it. Now I'm going to do the opposite and take some colour because I want a very dark colour. I'll take some of that blue, a little bit of white to lighten it up, some of the burnt sienna, and we get a lovely blue grey. Now that's a very bluey grey, as you can see there. But if I add more brown to it, then I can make quite a warm and browny grey. So it's a bit like making blacks. When I make black normally in paint, I use Prussian blue or a deep blue and a warm colour, and I can make my my black by using very dark, so I can make it warmer or cooler that way rather than using black itself. Now I can go warmer still. I can add more and more of that brown, even a touch of red. Look at the lovely brown red sky we can get there. So we've got from cools through to warm greys. We could go even cooler grey. Let's take some of the cerulean and add that to it and see how dark we can go with that. It gives a purpley blue grey. Add some white to that, and we soon end up with quite a light blue purple grey. Now that's a fairly warm colour. Add a bit of yellow to that as well, and we start to get a more orangey browny grey, which is a lot more like this colour here. So there we have a whole variation of greys just with those few colours. A little touch of the purple, and I can take my grey into the purple. And remember that one colour works against another. If I take this Prussian blue and add that, then I get a lovely dark mid-grey, which is ideal for this area here and would link into this one. So all these various warms and cools will give us greys. If I just took, as an example, the black and white, then I get a very inert grey, slightly bluer grey because I've got a little touch of the warm on there, but you see how much more colourful and how lovely these other greys are, made by the tertiary colour brown and the primary colour blue. Down here, if I want to make a lighter colour, I can take the yellow, add a bit of white to that, and I can start to make the cream for here lower down, make that a little bit warmer still, little touch of the red, and I can get a warmer, more orangey colour, a little touch of the brown into that, and a bit more white, and we get a much warmer, more orangey. Now if I flick this, if I start to use the brush in a more feathery way, by using the texture and the tip and blending, you see we can start to get these light effects of the clouds in the same way as they are here. So it's a way of mixing all of these various greys, light and dark and tonal, to get these light and dark colours. I want to come up there now. I'm going to take a little bit of the cerulean blue, which is much lighter, and some white, and I can start to get these lovely silvery greys that are going on here. That gives me a light silvery bluey grey. You get some delightful colours this way. And then there's the slightly pinker one, so if I take that colour, add a little bit of the magenta, we start to get the pinky greys of the sun gleaming through. So there you have it, all of those variations of greys between the light blues, the pinks, the deeper browns, which will give us all of these colours here. Look, you can see all the greys going on exactly the same way as I have there. Now, when I come to paint the darker areas and the lighter areas, I'm just going to paint this darker area here, which is the Prussian blue and the brown, which is very dark. A bit more brown into that. You see I've got quite a... That was not using black, but it almost looks black, doesn't it? A little bit of those two warms just to warm it up a bit. There we go. Make that very, very dark and a little bit more blue into it. The two blues. And I want to have some light coming out from underneath it. Then if I now make my lighter colour to go around, one of the beauties of acrylics is the speed it will dry. I'm going to put this on before it's had time to dry. If I make my very light colour here with a bit of cream, so yellow and white, and the tiniest touch of warm colour, and I can put that light around that cloud, and you see here we get that effect. Look, just feather it in and up. So I put this light all the way around. You see how this lovely sky suddenly starts to appear now. Now if I make some, just make it a little bit creamer, I can drag those bits of light coming down and out, just as if they're coming, rays of light coming down through onto the landscape. To make that a little bit lighter still, just to where the light's coming in, you can see the effect we'll get. And a touch of blue as well, maybe. Very, very light. Just a bit on there. A little bit cooler coming around. And if this was a dark landscape, let's just make it a dark landscape. I'm going to mix a little bit of the yellow with the Prussian blue to give a very dark landscape there. And then make myself an even darker colour still with some of the cobalt and the ultramarine and brown. We'll just put a few trees into the background on the horizon. Now, where the light shines, I could pick up a little bit of very light green, so my cerulean and yellow. And we could just put in lighter still, And we can just catch tops of trees or where the light is just shining on things here to give the effect of sunlight catching. So you get the idea then of these various greys that we can make and how. Just with those few colours, our secondary and tertiary, our blues and our browns. Another very nice grey we can make in oils is actually to mix alizarin crimson and viridian green, which also gives a beautiful grey. Now let's just look again at the palette. That's our palette, the greys that we just mixed, and you can see how we've made those greys in the sky just by mixing those few colours together. Now let's do it on the actual painting. And we can get the feeling of the light coming through into the distance here as well. Even these little bits. Right, it's a little bit golder in places, so I'm going to take a little bit of the burnt sienna and the yellow, just make it a fraction warmer in some places here, with the light shining through. Just blend them in. So that's our sky. I want it fairly dark because I want to be able to show the seagulls against it later. Now let's come down to the landscape. We want to have light shining across bits and pieces. So I'm going to put a fairly dark colour on first. I'm going to make up something like a yellow ochre by using the burnt sienna, some of the yellow, chrome yellow, a wee touch of the cerulean just to bring it back a bit. We'll make ourselves a blue-grey there. Yellowy blue-grey just to fill in for the moment. Just to give this board a coat of paint basically that I can work up onto without any drawing marks or anything else to annoy me behind it. So Lincolnshire, the flat fenland here with the light, these lovely skies that we get coming down shining through, using the cerulean blue and a little bit of the chrome yellow and a small touch of white just as body colour, just to try and lighten it up a bit. I'm going to put it fairly cool at the moment, and I'm going to put some highlighting in later. And that green will also be coming into the grape stubble a little bit here, and you notice I'm going to just feather that in to give the indication, the feeling of another colour happening. The tip of the brush, slightly broken, you can get the effect of little stubble bits. Come across now to the colours for the soil. It's a nice rich deep loam colour, so I'm going to start with my burnt sienna. Let's just see what that does straight on this. It's too warm, so I'm going to add some ultramarine to that, and we'll get a lovely purple blue, a purple brown, which would be perfect just to give a basic before we put the lighter colours on top. So a nice purple brown, blue in the distance. Over here, let's get our colours plonked in straight away. Really rough edge there as the grasses come up around it. And we need to look at the angles of this perspective. Now in the foreground here I've got a lot of greenery, bits of brown, little bits of brown coming into it, so we'll still do just that, with a bit of the brown happening. The basic colours in just so I can get rid of the hardboard and know where I am. A little bit of red now into my yellow to make us slightly more orange, slightly warmer just there. And we need some of the greens, so now we'll make a green with the cerulean blue and the yellow. It's quite a nice light green. Let's cover this board up, feel it coming into those bits of green rushes there. A bit darker and bluer in places, so we can use the different amount of blue that we put into the yellow, or the yellow into the blue, as to how the greens will vary. quite strong yellowy green just there. See how the different greens can work and make it come alive. Make us feel as if we're going into the picture. Some deeper blue now, take some ultramarine. Just feel some of these grasses a bit in the shadowed areas. Then we'll do the rest with detail with a smaller brush. Just finding our way. There's a very dark tree up here, so I'm going to take my ultramarine and add a little bit of the burnt sienna to it. It's quite a deep bluey brown coming up into here, this tree from behind. It comes up, a block of it there, into the wind. We'll just flick these tree leaves around, give the feeling of that tree like that. Come back with a little bit of the light green into places and just colour this in for the minute. Now I need to go down in brush size. Big brush for the big jobs, now we need to go slightly smaller. I'm mixing the same colour, the ultramarine and the burnt sienna, just to find our distant little trees and horizon over here. Already you can see the landscape starting to take shape. I'm going to take a little touch of, just a touch of the black this time. I don't like using black, but it has to be darkened down a bit now, so with the Prussian in it, I'll just make a slightly darker bush shape just there against that. The same into here, this wants to be a bit darker as well. Right over here we've got some darker bushes. This time down to 1/4 inch. And I'm going to take a little bit of the cadmium red and just as it is, just drop it in over here because I want a little bit of a red house right on the edge here. Just to mark out where I'm going to have it there. Must be a little bit more orange, so a little tad to catch the light there. We'll play with some light around there in a moment. So we've got that little red house there. And then slightly warmer and greyer here where this tree is here. We've got another house coming in there, which I want to paint right across there. Right, I'm just getting the highlights in, just feeling where things are. Alright. Let's look at the tractor before we do anything else. It needs getting in. Let's put this nice tractor. Not easy to draw. Let's have a look at where it is. So that's where he is. Now we need to get the chappie himself in. He's sort of one of our greys here. Just a silhouette of his shoulders as he sits there at the cab, leaning slightly. Let's look at these greys. The yellow in there in a minute. Put some texture in for the tractor tyres. Now I want a dark. So back to my Prussian. A little touch of black. Just to put in some of these darks into the wheel. What we've got to do is put the right colours in the right places and the right shapes, and hopefully the tractor will just appear. The tractor tread to the tyre, just indicate a few. You see the tractor appearing. I need some greens, very bright green. I don't know whether we're going to manage it with what we've got. Let's have a look and see. It's the yellow first and the tiniest touch of cerulean. Let's try and see. So it comes on the top of the tractor mudguards there. And here, bluer, that side. It also comes across the top of the cab here. And it goes a bit more orange to the green up here. And we'll have to come back and put some light in between those to bring them out later, because they're almost too dark, too blending too much. I don't want to paint all the structure in, but just want to indicate the parts of the tractor. Right, and if we go between them, slightly lighter colour, we can pick them out. Right, that'll do for tractor for the moment. Now in front of the tractor we should also have some of this lighter colour catching and going forward, so that then we can get a perspective of that as well, because that's where he's going. Right, now we've got to continue with the plough furrows. Do that by adding more green to the furrow. Let's come back with a sort of slightly more yellowy green just coming across the surface of it. Just right, a bit more brown in there. So we don't just work along things, we work across them as well, feeling the texture of the plough to lead the eye in. Perspective is all an illusion anyway. This is linear perspective. Aerial perspective is done with the warmer and cool colours, but this is the linear perspective, which is where we make lines appear to go somewhere and fool the eye by the use of a vanishing point. And we get a little bit stronger into the foreground. Our yellowy browns. And this is about aerial perspective now, because I'm using warmer colours here in the foreground to make us feel that it's going cooler into the distance. Building up and building up. You can hear the tractors in the background now, they're all working very, very hard to get their autumn crops in and plough up and ready for a hard winter here. So, working loosely, but now I'm just beginning to tighten up a little bit more and start to make more of these textures. Little bits of stubble and grass, as you see. You need to do the same with soil. Make it a bit more orange where the light is just catching it. Before we put the seagulls in. So we want to catch a little bit more sunlight on the tops of some of these trees maybe too. And we just make it up as we go along really, don't we? Just looking where the light should or could fall on areas. And we'll try and make it glisten with light. Of course, if we go lighter, we need to go darker as well, so I do need to make up some darker shades in between here to make it feel cooler in between the sunlight. So we'll take now some of my purple and the blue and just work a few of these darks, these warmer colours up here. As I was saying about aerial perspective, now I've done that, I need to come into here with some of these darker bits to bring that forward as well. All of these little dots and dashes and marks will indicate areas of stubble or a little hole in the grass the mouse has been. Come back up into the lights a bit. I want that shining a little bit brighter. I'm going to make a little bit purer cream just to come out of the light here at first. Don't make it too much sunlight that's just gleaming through and trying to break through the cloudy areas, but it's finding it very difficult. Little bits of light coming all the way back. So we've almost finished our background, and we've got the highlights going across the fields here. To come back to the foreground now, this area, before we look at the seagulls that are all over the place. It's rather fun, isn't it? Now, here we can afford to be a bit lighter with the textures on my brush into a blade, and let's see if we can start to paint in some of the bits of grass, and feeling of Lincolnshire now really starting to come through, haven't we? But you don't know what Lincolnshire's like, perhaps. Well, maybe this series will help you to enjoy Lincolnshire, and maybe even come and visit it one day. So you don't often see me painting in as much detail, but there are all little pieces of light, and it's about a time of day, it's about a moment in time that I'm trying to capture. So we're painting darks over lights, lights over darks, backwards and forwards, playing with these forms. Make sure we're not painting marks all in the same direction as well, because grasses don't. They come with the wind and they blow across each other and all sorts of different things here, so we need to find those different angles and things as well. There's colourful painting, even though it's a dull day with the highlights going on. Nothing to stop us from painting with colour still. Right, let's look now at doing the seagulls, which I might need to get myself a little round brush for. Now the seagulls are going to be light against dark and dark against light, so we've got a lot of them flying around here. What we have to decide is just where, because they're quite important obviously. So if we have them flying all around the they're going to be high up, some of them too. Some are close, some are far. So close here behind at times. It's amazing actually how many of them do have, and I've got a photograph here that I'm working from, do have their wings in the same position. It's surprising. We do get some that are, I think would all be different, but in fact looking at it here they're not all different. I don't think we can have too many of these, you know. I don't think we can have too many. I think we'll just put as many as we want in. And we've almost done that painting with those. Now we need to do some darks, because those seagulls are not just white spots, they have darks as well. As I was saying, the dark against the light against the dark. And, in places there are dark seagulls too. So the eye isn't drawn there too much, just enough. And that should do it, I think. We'll leave it at that.
High Bentham in the Dales, so we're going to do a film of Dales and Fenland. Rather nice, different paintings than what we're doing here. A little bit of fishing because it's easy to get to access for me to the river. I like to do a little bit of fly fishing occasionally. To me it's the epitome of the art. So I'm using a little gold-ribbed hare's ear here. It's a lovely little stream this, a little tributary that goes into the River Loon. So we're going to do another film for you, this time a whole series of different landscape paintings, rivers, all different sorts of scenes out in the countryside. Good dog. He's a good girl. He's a good dogs. Good dog. That's a great dog, that one.
A duller morning this morning, but it's still a lovely place to be and paint. I'll just show you my stuff. I've got my box of oil paints, spares, ducks, palettes.